Welcome back to Literally First Class. We are talking about how the upper limit is physical, not just mental. A lot of people call this like, I have a mindset block. I mean, yes, but that's at the level of awareness, right? And a couple episodes ago, I talked all about how the nervous system is your strategy to success, how you can upgrade your success by upgrading your internal state. Do you have to do this? No. But if you had a faster way to hack it, wouldn't you choose that? If someone said, hey, when you invest, $40,000 in getting the right kind of rewiring work with your nervous system, and it meant that you got $80,000 handed back to you, would you do it? My guess is yes, you probably would. That's the kind of work that we do here with Elevate with Keri. And I'm talking about the upper limit being physical, not just mental today, so that you can start to identify a little bit more when you are unpacking why your growth ceiling isn't just a mindset, right? When you're really learning how to spot when your body's rejecting the very success that you're working toward, which is so frustrating, by the way. Or not to be, we can't lose this part of the conversation when you've just achieved the success you've been working toward, and then your body starts to reject the very success. Here's what happens. You stop doing the thing that created the momentum, like you unconsciously stop taking action and you stop being in motion. So then you literally stop putting, again, the money making activities that got you there in place, right? You also might start to tap out, right? You might start to feel really anxious. You might have physical symptoms of certain things. So we're going to talk a little bit more about all that. So, what is an upper limit? I talk a lot about this. I gave a talk 3 years ago on the upper limit. I did not come up with that verbiage. I think Gay Hendricks was the one to coin the term upper limit. It's the internal thermostat that indicates it's like the unconscious sense of limitation. It's the perceived internal barrier that you think is possible, but it's not really a barrier. It's just a perceived barrier, right? And so what does the nervous system do? It actually tries to keep you safe, and keeping you safe tries to keep you the same. And that's the opposite of the goal when you're growing, when you're expanding your consciousness and you're trying to achieve the next thing. Maybe it's a higher money bracket, maybe it's more impact, maybe it's just getting your voice out in front of people. Maybe it has nothing to do with the money and all that. It's just about reaching more people and being in front of more eyeballs, and yet that feels like the most dangerous, scary thing ever. And so what happens is your body starts to physically have responses when you set out on this path. Who here has ever booked a speaking engagement only to get up to the speaking engagement and suddenly you lose your voice and you get laryngitis or sore throat? Interesting. What about after you've just shared something super vulnerable and now you go into you completely get full blown sick, right? What if you are really in a very stressful decision making season situation challenge and you're getting headaches all the time? This is proof that the body can it communicates physically, but it's also proof that these internal barriers and set points actually become physical. So what do we do about it? Because it's not just our mindset. You might even be aware that you have this thing. Like you're like, every time I go to speak, this happens. Like, or every time I do speak, it's like, my throat closes up and I can't speak for days after. Or every time I go through an up level, it's like I get sick on the back end of it. Or every time I notice I hit like a big cash windfall, I like go high to flying and I stop doing the thing that got me there. Whatever. You're probably aware. You're probably aware that this is happening. And that's really frustrating, isn't it? Because now you're aware of this thing and yet you keep trying to override it. You can only override it so long before it becomes worse or just doesn't go away and literally limits your ability to achieve or keep that success. And this is proof that it's not just mindset. Because if it was mindset, well, then you would already have changed it if awareness was just the thing you needed to transform, right? But it's deeper than that. It's the rewiring work. And so what that looks like is when you and I are in a session or we're doing an immersion or something like that, I get to have your nervous system with me, which is super exciting. And we start by a cognitive piece. Okay, when you go to speak at an event or the last time you went to speak at an event or the last time you got on stage, etc., what did you notice happened inside your body? I started to break out in hives. Great. Now we start there. Now we have accessed, I always think of it like a thread that's like peeking out of your body. Now we've accessed the thread that leads us into the nervous system. Because when we start speaking the language of the nervous system, we're speaking in terms of sensations. Why does this matter? It's because the nervous system just does a whole bunch of things on its own to protect us unconsciously. Like it's supposed to be undetected and automatic. You don't stop and think like, there's a fire outside or there's a bear, like let me run away. But your body acts like that's what's happening, even in safe situations, because it feels unsafe. So when you're in front of a bunch of eyeballs or you could be really visible, I've talked about, recording these vlogs that I haven't posted. Every time I think about posting the vlog, I'm like, oh, like that's so scary. Like I don't, and so moving through the somatic work in myself and feeling the sensation and then working with a practitioner to help me rewire that so I can do it faster. That is the very thing that can actually change your reaction to it. So the action doesn't change, but your reaction starts to, and that's where growth happens. How do you know that rewiring work and somatic work is working? Maybe not at the pace or the clip that you want, but how do you know it's working? You notice things sooner, you get back into action faster, or the external stimuli that doesn't change has a lesser impact or felt sense in your nervous system. Like, meaning you react less. It pisses you off less. You're like, oh, that's interesting. Like, same thing happened, but I like barely responded. And I didn't even feel reactive about it. Awesome. That's growth. Okay. And then we measure somatic work by two things. It's your sense of aliveness and your sense of agility, your ability to move through things faster, even with high levels of activation or low levels, right? High highs and low lows. Those of you that are chasing dopamine drive, I'm talking to you. Like, you ever have a big event and it's like, oh, it's amazing. And then you come down and it's like so low and it's like, oh, what is life? And it's like apathetic, right? So high highs, low lows. We want to be able to neutralize that a little bit more in the system. And then aliveness, to feel any fucking thing, to feel elation and joy and amazing happiness, and also to feel great, anger and deep sadness, and it not knock you out of the game a lot for a long time or really at all. And that's the measure of success and growth in somatic work. So when we unpack why your growth ceiling, isn't just a mindset, it's somatic, we're looking at the physical sensations. And I've brought this up before, but tears are proof that emotions become physical. And emotions are what? Energy and motion. And deeper than that, we look at the sensations because now that's the language of the nervous system. And the language of the nervous system is important. We need to speak that in order to rewire that. So it's not about just like sitting and crying, in your bedroom. It's about doing literal rewiring. Okay, so I want to get into a little bit deeper about what that means. There are a few terms that we use in nervous system work that are more important for me to understand and less important for you to understand, but I still get asked the question like, what does that look like and why are we doing this? So we need to expand capacity. That means our ability to be with high highs and low lows, right? I'm going to use my ugly cup of immune building water without losing our shit, without flooding the system, without going into overwhelm. So like, how can we stay within the window of tolerance? How can we stay within the cup without losing it, right? And without getting sucked into a spiral? That's capacity building. And we kind of stretch it like a balloon, right? And that's for me to worry about. You don't have to worry about that. The other is we take small pieces over time, which add up. Basically, like, think of a staircase. It's like one step, next step, right? Leads to a whole staircase. We don't do the whole staircase all at once because that could re-traumatize the system. And it depends on your nervous system and how much you can actually handle going there and feeling and being with a sensation. And that just depends on your capacity. Like, some people have a narrow capacity, and that means that like a little bit feels like a lot, right? And that is where we just start. So a little bit over time. And then we want to also notice the good things. So the brain already has a negative bias. Here's why it's not working. Here's where I can't do it. Here's why I can't do it. All these limitations, these perceived unconscious barriers are not actually the limit. They're the perceived limit of what you think is possible based on what you've created, the evidence you currently have, maybe the people you surround yourself with. That's why getting in rooms is so much less about being in the energy of people and way more about expanding the fuck out of your consciousness to be around people doing really cool things that like you couldn't even imagine. And here you are having a conversation about it. That's why it's important. right? So it's about stretching. So you know the not so great things, like, failure, and like all the ways that your brain is telling you you can't do it, and all the ways your body is physically responding as if you can't do it. The sensations, the physical things happening, the blotchiness, the throat closing up, like losing your voice, getting laryngitis, getting sick after a big windfall, right? All of those are physical things. But what about the good things? Like, we kind of miss those things when our system is hijacked by fear and doubt and scarcity. When we miss those things, then we don't connect to them. So, like, when we take time with somebody who is guiding us toward also noticing, well, what I see that negative thing, or how hard that was, or challenging that was, or, you know, um, where that was a big fuck up or whatever. But what about this thing that was actually really great? Was there anything that was also great? Oh, yeah, there was. But I didn't even connect. I didn't even remember that till now, you might think. I had this experience a few years ago, and I was hosting this event, and it went really, really bad. And for a long time, it was hard to look at the videos. And over time, I started to look at the videos, and I just was like, there were actually some really amazing things about that trip, but I couldn't even connect to it because the bad kind of overshadowed the good. So if we can connect to that, and feel that in our body, it's like, oh, you know what? I can be with the thing that doesn't feel so great without it knocking me right into overwhelm and flooding, because I can also access and remember there's some good stuff despite that. And that's the part that's important. That's called, pendulation. Again, these are things you don't have to worry about. That's in my arena to make sure that we're going there with your nervous system. And that's important too. And we have to also create some evidence for good things. Otherwise, why would you want to keep doing this if it's all really scary and terrible? You're going to avoid it. You're going to procrastinate. You're going to feel perpetually stuck, right? So, physical is also lack of action. Hard to get off the couch. I'm exhausted, you might feel like. These are all indicative of different somatic responses, different self protective responses, SPR, that we use inside our leadership archetype in our Apex Academy, or if you're in our Somatic Success Society Facebook group, you can just type that into Facebook, or you can click the link in the show notes below and watch some trainings on that. But yeah, upper limit is definitely physical. It's not a coincidence. Your body is speaking loudly and is basically saying, I'm not safe. The only way that it feels safe is when it stays the same. And that's the opposite of growth. So if you want help with that, then let's chat. But this is how you can start to identify that. So pay attention, right? If something feels really stretchy and a little scary, I want you to write down like physical symptoms, like what's coming up. I have a speaking gig, and oh, weird. I'm having like my throat is super sore. Oh no, every time I have a speaking thing, I get laryngitis. Or every time I go to write my book down, like, I get arthritis in my hand. Weird, right? Or whatever, but it's all connected. And the point is, I want you to write down the physical symptoms of what you perceive to be the mental mindset block, because it's not a mindset issue. If it were just a mindset issue, it would already be transformed because you're already aware of it, likely. You're already aware that most of these things happen. Let's put it to paper, and then we can start from there. All right, keep it first class, and I'll see you on the next episode of Literally First Class.